Welcome back to that 90s pod, everybody. We are diving deep into the movie Heat today,
Woo! Yeah.
which came out in 95.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of set a new standard for action movies. I think we can both
Oh,
agree.
yeah.
And so we're going to kind of unpack, why it's considered more than just a typical shoot 'em up,
Yeah.
how it reflects 90s culture, and also just its lasting impact on film.
Right.
And if you are enjoying these deep dives,
Yes.
don't forget to subscribe to that 90s pod and share it with your friends.
Tell everybody.
Let's turn up the heat on this one.
All right, so what's really interesting about Heat is that it arrived at this really fascinating turning point for film, I think.
Okay.
The mid-90s, you saw the rise of independent cinema, and audiences were kind of hungry for something a little more complex than just the typical blockbuster,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, there was this craving for substance, for sure.
Yeah.
Like stories that went beyond just the surface.
Right.
And, also on top of that, crime was having this huge moment in pop culture.
Yep.
Shows like Cops had everybody glued to their screens, fascinated by real-life police chases and arrests.
Yeah.
And so Heat definitely tapped into that energy,
Yeah.
but took it in a whole other direction, I think.
Totally. It wasn't just about the spectacle of crime.
Right.
Heat reflected on the psychology of the crime, the motivations and the consequences,
Right.
and the blurred lines between right and wrong.
For sure.
And, of course, it had Michael Mann at the helm,
Of course.
a director known for his gritty realism and meticulous attention to detail.
And then you bring in Al Pacino and Robert De Niro.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about a powerhouse duo.
I mean,
Pacino as the obsessive detective Hannah,
right.
and De Niro as the equally driven master thief Neil McCauley.
Yeah.
I mean, the stage was set for something really special.
Yeah. And speaking of Macaulay and Hannah, one of the things that sets Heat apart is how it develops these characters.
Okay.
You're not just watching a cat and mouse chase between cop and criminal.
Right.
You're seeing their personal lives, their struggles, their flaws.
Yeah.
It adds this whole other layer of depth that you wouldn't expect from a typical heist film.
Oh, for sure. Like, think about McCauley for a second.
Right.
He's a master thief, meticulous, disciplined, but he's also trying to have a relationship.
Yeah.
Trying to find some normalcy in this life that he's chosen.
Right.
And then you have Hannah, who's so consumed by his work that his marriage is falling apart.
Right.
It's like both of them are sacrificing everything for their chosen paths.
Precisely. And that makes you question, are they really so different?
Right.
They're both driven obsessed even.
Yeah.
And in a way, they respect each other.
Yeah.
It's like looking in a mirror and seeing a distorted reflection of yourself.
That scene where they finally meet face to face in the coffee shop,
Oh, man.
it's electric.
It's so
You
good.
can feel the tension,
Yeah.
the mutual understanding, even though they're on opposite sides of the law.
And that scene is a masterclass in acting and directing.
Oh, yeah.
But what's really fascinating is that De Niro and Pacino had only shared about 2 minutes of screen time before that moment.
No way, really. Yeah. That makes it even more impressive.
I know.
Talk about bringing the intensity.
Seriously.
And, Heat doesn't just deliver on those powerful character moments.
Right?
The action sequences are something else.
Oh, yeah.
I remember watching that bank heist scene in a packed theater, and the tension was unbelievable.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was so well crafted, every shot so deliberate. You felt like you were right there in the middle of it all.
That's the thing about Michael Mann.
Yeah.
His commitment to realism in those scenes is incredible.
Yeah.
He brought in real ex-police officers
Wow.
and even former criminals to advise on the film.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the sound design, especially in the gunfight scenes, is so visceral, so intense, it really puts you in the moment.
It's not just loud noises, though, right?
Right.
There's a real artistry to how the sound is used to create tension and suspense.
Totally.
It's like you're feeling the impact of every gunshot, the chaos and the adrenaline.
Exactly. And those technical aspects, the cinematography, the sound design, the meticulous attention to detail, they all contribute to the film's lasting impact.
Right.
Heat became a template for later heist films like Inception and The Town.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they took those elements of meticulous planning and attention to detail, but they also explored those same ethical dilemmas that Mann brought to the forefront in Heat.
Right.
And it's not just about the plot or the action. Heat has this visual style that's so distinct.
Oh, yeah.
Like, think about it. Those nighttime scenes bathed in shadows, almost like you're seeing L.A. through a film noir filter.
Yeah.
That wasn't just stylish. It added to the feeling of unease, the sense that both Macaulay and Hannah are operating in this morally gray world
Right.
where the lines between right and wrong are blurred.
Yeah, it's like the city itself becomes a character in the film.
Totally.
This dark, and brooding backdrop for their obsessive pursuits.
And speaking of obsession, Heat really makes you think about what drives these characters.
Yeah, and if you kind of connect this to the bigger picture of what was going on in the 90s, you had this economic uncertainty, people were losing jobs, downsizing was rampant.
Right.
There was this feeling of anxiety about the future, and Heat kind of reflects that.
Totally.
You know, it shows both Macaulay and Hannah driven to extremes, maybe even sacrificing their personal lives for their ambition.
That's a great point. It makes you wonder if their dedication is more of a curse than a blessing.
Yeah.
They're both so good at what they do, but at what cost?
Right.
And it's not just them. Even the supporting characters have this depth and complexity.
Oh, yeah. Val Kilmer, who plays Chris Hurlis, one of Macaulay's crew,
Right.
actually learned how to crack safes for the role.
Wow.
That's the kind of dedication that went into making Heat feel so authentic.
Yeah.
The actors really immerse themselves in that world.
It definitely shows you believe these characters, you understand their motivations, even if you don't agree with their choices.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Heat so compelling. It doesn't shy away from those moral complexities.
Yeah.
It makes you confront those uncomfortable truths about good and evil and those gray areas in between.
Absolutely. And for me, the film has this almost operatic quality to it.
Okay.
There's this grand scale, these heightened emotions.
Right.
It's not just a crime drama, it's a tragedy.
Right.
These characters are doomed from the start,
Right.
and you know it's all going to end in this fiery climax.
Yeah.
And yet, you can't help but be drawn to their story,
Totally.
to their fate.
It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck.
Yeah.
You know what's coming,
Yeah.
but you can't look away.
Right.
And the music, the score, it just amplifies that sense of impending doom.
The music is so evocative, so haunting.
Yeah.
Michael Mann actually chose the score before he even started filming.
Oh, wow.
He wanted the music to inform the mood and the pacing of the film.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It really speaks to his vision as a director, how he thought about every detail, every element, and how it would contribute to the overall impact. And that's why even after all these years, Heat still holds up as a masterpiece.
It really does. Before we go any further, though, I want to remind everyone out there, if you're enjoying this deep dive into Heat, be sure to subscribe to That 90s Pod and tell your friends.
Yes.
We're here every week unpacking the movies, music, and culture that define a decade.
Yeah, it really is a film that deserves to be revisited. You know,
Yeah.
each time you watch Heat, you pick up on these new layers, these little details that add to the richness of the story.
It's true.
And you've got to love how the movie captures that 90s aesthetic.
Oh, yeah.
From the fashion to the cars to the soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's like a time capsule of that era.
Speaking of time capsules, did you know that the shootout scene in Heat
Yeah.
was so realistic that it's actually studied by law enforcement and military personnel?
Seriously.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense with Mann's commitment to authenticity.
Yeah.
But it's not all about technical accuracy, though, right?
Right.
Heat also goes deep into these philosophical questions
All right.
about choice, destiny, the duality of man.
You've hit on something key there.
Yeah.
Remember how Macaulay says he has to be ready to walk away from everything in 30 seconds flat if things go south?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that line speaks volumes about his commitment to his life of crime, but also to the idea that he's trapped by it.
And you could almost argue that Hannah is just as trapped by his obsession with catching Macaulay.
Right.
Both of them are so consumed by their work that they've pushed away the people who care about them.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if either of them can ever truly escape the cycle they're caught in.
What's so fascinating is that Heat doesn't offer easy answers.
Right.
It presents these complex characters, these flawed individuals making difficult choices, and it leaves you to grapple with the implications.
Yeah.
Do you sympathize with Macaulay even though he's a criminal?
Right.
Do you question Hannah's methods even though he's on the side of the law?
It's thought-provoking, for sure.
Yeah.
That's what makes it more than just an action film.
Yeah.
It stays with you long after the credits roll, and it makes you think about your own values, your own choices.
Absolutely. It's a film that invites multiple interpretations and sparks important conversations.
It does.
And that's the mark of a truly great piece of cinema.
It is. So after diving deep into Heat, do you see it differently now?
Yeah,
Does it feel like more than just a heist film to you?
totally.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. And that wraps up this episode of That 90s Pod.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Heat. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends. Until next time, keep it 90s.
Keep it 90s.